Casey Matthew with Casey's Paint Shop. Today we're going to shoot a video explaining how to use all these BASF products. Starting on our right, we've got our clears that we're going to use on the bottom side of the hood. This will make our matte clear. This is our sealer. It goes straight over the E-coat. We've got our gloss clear. We've got all of our cleaners lined up here. We've got our epoxy with our activator to turn us into a polyuroxy sealer. You can either use your DH46, 47. I don't personally like using DH42, but you can use that in this depending on your application temperature and the size of the panel you're working with. And these are our tack rags from BASF. They don't feel very tacky when you open them up, but they work exceptionally well and they're anti-static. So starting on our cleaners, we have our 900, 901, 902, 903, and 910. So starting from the left but my right, 901. So this is like a universal cleaner. You can use it like a final wipe if you'd like. After you've done the other ones, if you just like, or say you step out and you come back in, you want to touch something up, 901 works really well. 900 is our wax and grease remover, right? Is that what it says? Yep. So that's our wax and grease remover. This works really well in conjunction. So we call it our three-step wipe down. So in our shop, before we paint anything, we go 900, 910, and then 901 last. Okay, so 900 is our wax and grease remover. That'll get off a lot of your contaminants. The 910 is a waterborne cleaner, so this will get off like all of your fingerprints. So between the two of these, that should get your panel extremely clean. And then we do a final wipe with 901 before we tack it off with our tack rags here. The 902 is the plastic prep cleaner, right? Yep. So the plastic prep cleaner is a very aggressive cleaner. It works well for like urethane bumpers and, you know, obviously your plastic parts, whatever. We have used this when we have run out of our bare metal cleaner, which is a Glazerite. It's a 360-4 that we wipe down all of our cards with before we put them in epoxy, and that works really well. This will kind of do the same thing. Technically, it's not the exact same thing, but this is aggressive. So we try not to use this unless we have to. This has also pulled the paint off of plastics. We tried to paint some plastic pieces, and you'll notice that if it's already painted and you're just trying to clean something up, this will pull paint. Then the 903 is an anti-static wipe. So if we are painting urethane bumper, plastic pieces, or just anything, like even fiberglass, we use the 903 as our final wipe, and that'll like discharge all of the static that's in the parts. And then we also follow that up with our anti-static tack rag from BASF. So these cleaners are awesome. Like I said, there's one more. It's a 360-4. It's from Glazerite. BASF does not have an actual bare metal cleaner as where the BASF Glazerite line instead of the Diamond. Okay, these are all Diamond. The RM Diamond system has that. The Glazerite from BASF has a bare metal cleaner, and that's 360-4. All these cleaners work really well. I can't remember the last time that we've had any contaminants. We're very religious on wiping everything down with our three-step before we do any paint. So I would suggest that you are too. Don't feel that 901 is just going to be, just because it's a universal cleaner and it just kind of cleans everything, don't think that this is going to do the job that when you do all three together. This won't get off everything. So if you really want to make sure all your contaminants are off, do 900, 910, and then 901, and then hit it with that tack rag. So today we're going to be shooting some videos in the booth, going over some products that we use in the shop and how to use them, cleaners, degreasers, how to shoot sealers, paint, different clears. I contacted our friends over at AMD, and they sent me this new 67-72 F100 hood. I haven't seen one yet, so we're going to unbox it, put it in the booth, and this is what we're going to do our spray samples on today. So the first step we're going to take today is blowing it off. We just pulled it out of the box. We noticed there's a lot of cardboard residue and probably stuff from just like shipping and being around the warehouse or whatever. So we're going to blow all that off and then we're going to wipe it down.
BASF has come out with some great products that we can use here at Casey's Paint Shop to really help us expedite the prep process. So for today, we thought it would be a cool idea just to kind of show how rapidly you can get through our finished process. Now, luckily, our friends at AMD provided this super nice factory E-coated hood, so we're able to skip a couple steps to get us through the process faster. And one of the steps is that we're able to not sand this E-coat, and we're gonna get that ability based on a new sealer that they have. So the first step we're gonna take here is I'm gonna give Casey a pretty strong cleaner. And if you're an RM shop, that cleaner it's called 902. It's a raw plastic cleaner, but it's very, very strong. If you're a Glazerage shop, they make a 360-4, which is a metal cleaner. So they're designed to really do a great job of getting rid of all that grime, any kind of like packing residue or any kind of glue residue. So once we get this wiped down and super clean, his next step will be to tack it off, and then at that point, we'll go and mix up our sealer and we'll apply that. Now, if this were to be, say, a used part or something that was a little bit more dirty, our first step would be the blowing, and then we would do a soap and water wash followed by cleaning. But for this, it's going to be a quick 902, get it super clean, and then right to sealer. So something important to note, as you notice Casey wiping this down, is he's very specifically using white cleaning towels. And one of the purposes for that is you'll notice on the rag in his hand right now, you'll see some gray residue. So if it was an altered colored cloth or something gray or something blue, you wouldn't necessarily know how clean you're getting the panel. So you really want to try to focus on using white towels at all times that are lint-free, and that's just a huge benefit. The next step after the panel's nice and clean is we're going to run a tack rag. So we like the BASF B110s. They're an anti-static tack rag. They have a lot of nice grip to them. So in the instance of this hood, tons of nooks, tons of crannies. So when you're doing the wiping process, you'll free some additional dirt and debris up, and this gives us the ability to pick all that stuff up so that when we get our sealer on, it's nice and smooth and clean and minimal amount of dirt and dust. So it's time for the sealer step and for us to mix that. And the old school methodology of using mixing sticks and mixing cups is many, many years behind us. So now we're able to use the BASF color software to allow us to mix the exact quantity we need without having to worry about scaled measurement. So Casey's gonna mix up the RM876 sealer. And like we had talked about earlier, the beauty of this stuff is that it's direct to an E-coated product that's been cleaned very well. So in this instance, we're gonna use this 876, which is a very nice, very black, quick drying sealer, dries very smooth, and we're gonna be spraying this hood with a Ford metallic color, so the undertone for this in this sealer will be absolutely perfect. So the mix ratio for this is available in the BASF TDS, and then Casey will pick his optimized gun for the application. We'll do one coat, we'll allow it to flash for about 20 to 30 minutes before we apply our base coat. Casey, what gun do you plan on using for this?
So I got my sealer gun, which is a SATA Jet 100 BF RP, and I use a 1.4 spray tip on it.
Awesome. So one of the things that we like to do is check the TDS. And in the TDS for the 876 sealer that we're going to be applying right now, we're able to come down here and look at some things that tell us what direction to go. So we're in a national rule market. which allows us to mix this 4:1:2, which Casey had done on scale. It tells us how to apply it. It tells us the drying is going to be 20 minutes at 68 degrees. We're at 70, so 20 minutes will be about perfect. And it also tells us down here in the characteristics that it's able to be done over unsanded e-coat with proper cleaning. So the nice thing about the ability to go over unsanded e-coat, if you notice on this big massive hood that we have, there's a lot of nooks, a lot of crannies, a lot of sharp edges. If we were to sand that, the odds of us getting a bunch of bare metal are very high. So if we're able to go this route with unsanded e-coat, then we don't have to worry about bare metal breakthroughs. We can go right to sealer. So we decided to pull a last minute audible and paint the inside of the hood pink, which is totally cool. It's on brand, obviously, black and pink. And one of the things that's super important to know when you're talking about color is understanding undertones and what the ground colors may need to be. So for this particular pink Porsche color that we're using, it doesn't have a required ground, which means that we can essentially put this black sealer underneath it that we have already applied. So what Casey will do is he'll use this BASF spray out card with 4 shades indicated. You have a white, a light gray, a darker gray, and a black. So he'll apply base coat to this while he applies base coat to the hood. And when we have coverage on this panel, we know we have coverage on the hood.
All right, so as Danny explained, our spray out cards, I'm going to be using my SadaJet 5000 or 5500X, and I use the I pattern, not the O, and HVLP, and it's a 1/4 tip.
So we had talked about coverage and doing a spray out card and the importance of understanding what that looks like. So for this particular color, it took us exactly 2.5 coats to get coverage over all 4 of the scenarios. So this is perfectly hidden, perfect application. So now the next step for us is to wait 15 minutes prior to the application of clear coat. So once again, we revert back to the tech data sheet, also known as the TDS, to make sure that we're following all the proper steps. The base coat to clear coat transition is a very, very important one, because if we have any solvents left behind in the base coat, we could potentially have an issue like dieback or peeling in the future with the clear. So it's going to be important that we let that 15-20 minute rest, let all the solvents flash out. We'll be back for clear. We're getting ready to apply some matte clear, and over the last several years, we've seen a big industry trend with a lot of vehicles receiving a matte finish right directly from the factory. So what we've noticed in the way that we've applied this matte clear is that we've been able to achieve a very consistent, very uniform look. And the way that we do that here at Casey's is that we mix the clear the way that we explained earlier, and then secondarily, when Casey applies the clear, we give significant time to make sure that prior to the second coat, the first coat is completely uniform and matte. If we were to apply the second coat too soon, there's a chance that you would have what we call leopard or cheetah printing, where you actually see a distortion where you have shiny spots and dull spots. So to avoid that, we let it fully matte out. This process not only works on the outside of a vehicle if you're repairing a matte finish, it works great for undersides when you have to do something that's matte finished from the factory on an underhood, a rad support, underneath the trunk, anything like that. So if you get a chance, take a look at Casey's 48. That vehicle that we displayed at SEMA 2 years ago was sprayed in this exact fashion, and one of the coolest parts is it was painted in pieces and bolted together, and the sheen is perfect. So we'll let him get some matte clear on and we'll check back with him.
You gotta take the tacking off very seriously. Should be good. So we sprayed the bottom side of this hood with DC 5600 using BC 101 as a flattening agent in it. There's a couple ways, different ways that you can mix that. This is my favorite way to mix it, is with the 101. I use a lot of matte clears, underhoods, interiors, chassis components, whatever, and I found that this gets the most consistent results. My 48 Ford that we did for SEMA a couple years ago was painted in panels, and it matches perfect. I've sprayed a lot of matte clears, and the hard part about most of them is the consistency. And with this one, even putting it on wet, like some of them you don't want to put on too wet. You got to make sure your fan pattern, almost the wetter you put this on, it seems like to me, and the way I spray, the better result I get out of it. Where some are like, you know, 50-50s or whatever, but this is nice. I like this finish. It works out perfect. It's just the right amount of sheen. To me, this is the best thing that we can do in our shop as far as getting different results and looks out of all of our finishes. So, you know, now that we're looking at this hood day after and it's super nice and cured out, you can just see this perfectly uniform finish. And in the last several years, we have seen this major incline, especially from the Europeans now getting into the Japanese market, where these matte finishes are becoming relatively standard and normal now. So a lot of refinish technicians that have never done one of these, they get a little bit nervous or a little bit gun shy and get concerned about how the end results are going to be. So when we use this particular BASF product, it just does such an incredible job because it's so user friendly. And not only the exterior, but you're seeing more interior surfaces now as far as under hoods and under deck lids and rad supports, that if you relieve it and roll a base coat, you'll tend to get this sheen, and it's, you know, that may fit in some rolls with a catalyst and you get some durability, but if you go to this matte finished sheen clear on top, you get a ton of protection and this beautiful matte finish. Another thing that's nice about this clear too is depending on how much flattening agent you put in it, you can change your level of gloss. So with this one, we mixed equal parts flattening agent with the clear, and you can change that to different temperatures or like different finishes depending on how much you put in it. So if you back that out, so like if you do 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 or however you decide to mix it, and you might want to do spray outs to get the exact finish you want, but just so y'all know, looking at this is equal parts flattener and clear, but you can make it probably more flat or more glossy depending on how much you put into it. Yeah, and that's a good point. When you look at some of the vehicles today that are done with these OEM finishes, depending on how that customer may be caring for that vehicle, it may change the gloss level of it. So like Casey had said, the vehicle from the factory may be this 1-to-1 creation that we have here of this nice matte sheen, but maybe a few years later of some, you know, not so good of maintenance, the sheen level may change. So you're able to bring that vehicle into your shop, make some spray out cards with different levels of flattener, and then create an absolutely perfect repair at the end. So one of the important things that we deal with every single day in collision repair is E-coated panels. And the quality of E-coat, generally OEM level, is pretty exceptional. However, there will be times where you have some Bach markings, or you have some masking markings, or it's a little bit of transportation nicks. So the really important thing is, even though the BASF products that we use at Casey's Paint Shop are direct to E-coat, you really want to make sure that you're looking over the panels very closely to make sure that you sand those with some P400 grit and truly get a flat, beautiful finish to start before we apply our undercoats and then get into the refinish process. So the first step that we take prior to sanding or preparing the E-coat is that we wipe the whole entire panel down really well with the BASF product that we love, the RM900 Wax and Grease Remover. The idea behind that is to make sure that all the surface contaminants are removed as opposed to them potentially being sanded into the E-coat. Now when Casey sands this hood, you'll notice that he's doing it rather quick. He's just slightly removing the texture and flattening out the E-coat, but trying to preserve as much of that original E-coat as possible because it's the best case scenario for corrosion protection. Once this process with the sanding is done, we'll follow it up with a red Scotch-Brite to make everything uniform. We'll blow it off, and then we'll start the cleaning process prior to the application of our sealer. 9 times out of 10, before I even wipe down with our cleaners, I take a white microfiber, because in my head, like anything that's dyed would maybe transfer onto the panel. But I'll take a brand new white microfiber, I'll wash it out with either Ivory or Dawn soap, make sure all the soap's out of it, and then I'll wipe down my panel. The microfiber grabs a lot of the dust before I start. If anybody's ever used microfiber, you know, like if your hands are dry, they kind of stick to you or whatnot. This works really good just to help get the first initial dusting off for me, and then I'll go back and hit it with my microfibers with a lint-free rag.
So a really good standard practice is, like you'll see Casey doing here, is using a damp microfiber towel. It's kind of a pre-cleaner, and the benefit to that, you'll see it as he flips it over there, is it does a great job of extracting that first series of dust before we get into our wax and grease remover and our different types of cleaners. But a tip to consider is that when you have microfiber towels, especially if you reuse them, you want to make sure that you don't wash them using any kind of fabric softener, because fabric softeners will lock up the threads and actually make them repellent. So if you are going to reuse your microfibers, make sure that you just wash them with really good hot soapy water, no fabric softener, and that'll do a great job of dust extraction when you're doing this process. So you'll notice the way that Casey applies the cleaner is, in our opinion, one of the best ways to get super clean refinish. And what we'll do is we'll spray it on. And the reason that we like that method is that when you spray the product on, it allows it to sit for a few seconds and lift any of the potential dirt or dust or contaminants to the surface. So now when he wipes it away, he's wiping all that potential contamination off the panel instead of rubbing it back in. So this product that we use is the BASF RM900, which is a solvent-based wax and grease remover. Now, he's worn gloves this whole time, super good on the safety. If we were to have any kind of waterborne contamination like sweat, fingerprints, any kind of naturally occurring contamination, we would use the RM910 in addition, which is a water-based cleaner. And if this was, for example, if this was a plastic part where we were going to be dealing with some static, we would finalize it with 903, which is the RM anti-static product. But for what we're doing here, and as thorough as the prep job's been, we're going to do RM 900 wax and grease remover like he's doing now. We'll get it one final tack, and then we'll get into our sealer stage. So we got the hood ready to go. Casey's got it tacked up, he's suited up. And this particular product that we use here is BASF's polyuroxy. Polyuroxy is an incredibly innovative product because it combines all the corrosion protection and capabilities of an epoxy, but gives it the speed of a urethane. So when you think about the old thought process of you would never build a house on a bad foundation, all of your paint jobs start the exact same way. So we have a lot of bare metal exposure here. We still have a lot of great intact E-coat, but the best way to proceed forward is to really instill as much corrosion protection as possible. So here at Casey's, we like the polyuroxy sealer. There are some other options out there. So in the BASF line, this is a steel hood, so you could use the 1000 wipes, followed up with the 875, 876 sealer that we used on the underside of the hood. Or you could do the 1000 wipes or 2000 wipes if it's aluminum and pour on another sealer such as DP31. Now, we've noticed in the last several years, many of the OEMs for the collision world have started to require epoxies to go underneath their body filler, which I think is a fantastic idea because it truly gives you a next level of corrosion protection. So it's very important to understand your capabilities as well as your limitations for your paint line when you're getting into the corrosion protection process. So we'll let Casey get the polyuroxy flowing. process of applying the Ford Code RR, which is a quad coat technology color. So if you remember earlier, we applied the BASF polyuroxy to make sure that we have super good corrosion protection and a great foundation for the color that we're about to build. So what we decided to do in this scenario is apply the RM875-876 sealer mixed in the proper L shade. So Casey will apply this particular sealer to half the hood. Once we're done, we'll unmask it, and you'll be able to see the difference in a black, which would be an L00, to the L3, which is a medium gray. And the idea of the L03 is that it will allow us to get the exact match that we need as per Ford requirement in the OEM when we're done spraying the quad coat finish. So here at Casey's Paint Shop, something that we do very frequently is different gloss level finishes, matte, satin, semi-gloss. And the way that we have found to achieve those finishes in the best possible way is using the RMDC 5600 mixed with the Diamond BC 101. This gives us a very controllable outcome with an absolutely spectacular finish. You'll see on Casey's 48 truck that debuted at SEMA, that whole entire vehicle was actually painted in several pieces and several different days apart and bolted up. Every single panel matches perfectly. If you decide you want to go to a flat finish, make sure you consult your TDS because there are some other options. This is just the method that we prefer at Casey's Paint Shop. All right, so we're in the process of spraying this Ford Code RR, which is a quad coat refinish in the BASF RM system. So far we have the EP polyuroxy down to give us a really good ground foundation over that E-coat, give us really good corrosion protection. Our next step was to allow adequate flash time and then apply the 875-876 sealer in the correct L shade. So if we notice here in the BASF color formula lookup, if we click on Ford Code RR in the standard, we're going to get prompted and it's going to tell us that we have 3 stages to do here, and this is prior to the application of clear coat. So for us, 875-876 is going to be a combination of the gray and the white to give us the correct L shade of L03. The next stage is going to be the actual base coat color and ground, which contains all of these components. The third stage is going to contain ADT, which is the vibrant red, and a chromatic mixing clear. When all of these stages are complete, we'll have a quad coat finish that matches the Ford OEM perfectly. To show the importance of L-shaped grounds, we decided to keep one side of the hood in a black epoxy and the other side of the hood do an 875-876 L03 ground coat that corresponds to Ford Code RR. One of the most important things when you're dealing with a wet on wet sealer application, such as this scenario right here, is obeying the flash times. Flash times are incredibly important for the success and the long-term duration of the paint that you're going to apply over top of the sealer. If we were to not follow the flash times according to the TDS, we could have things such as dieback, potentially peeling or blistering. So we understand the importance that we need 20 minutes at 70 degrees to get this nice and flashed off before we apply the first coat of our RR ground.
Now that we have our hood split, so we have the right L shade on the passenger side and we're shooting over black on the driver's side. We mixed up enough to do 3 coats of base coat. I'm spraying it out of my SodaJet 5500. It's a HVLP with a 1/4 tip. I spray my fan all the way open and I regulate it at the wall until I get the pressure I want, which I shoot for like 25, 26. Regulating it at the wall gives your gun better control of the fluid coming out of it, so you don't have such a high volume of air pushing the fluid through here. You're not depending on the gun to do the regulating for you. We'll regulate it at the wall, and put 3 coats on.
So we're setting up to do what we think is probably the world's largest letdown panel. And the idea behind the process that we're going to go through is to show maybe some of the subtleties in the color change, and then potentially some of the more extreme color changes that you may see on an angle. So if you recall, this side of the hood is done in the black epoxy ground. This side of the hood is done in the L03 correct ground shade at 875, 876. The next step is going to be to apply 1 coat of the RR mid coat, remove the paper, a 2nd coat, and then the subsequent 3rd coat. So when we're finished, in theory there should be about 6 different colors spread out on this hood, all coming from 1 formula and 2 ground formulations.
right, so we finished our test panel. I'm about to spray clear. I'm using BASF DC 5300. I'm spraying it out of my SODAJET 5500, and I use a 1-3 tip, and this is the I pattern also. I'm gonna set my regulator at the wall for my air pressure that I'm looking for and spray some clear.
So we got the final clear on the hood, and this Ford code RR, like we had said earlier, is very specific with the ground coat that it requires. So the left side of the hood, the driver's side, was done in the black polyuroxy. The right side was done in the correct L03 ground shade with 875, 876. I'm pretty sure we accomplished the world's largest letdown panel. So you'll see some footage where there's 6 individual boxes. Colors like Ford code RR are very complex because each additional coat of candy and the ground coat is very, very, very dependent on what the outside color looks like when the job's finished. So this is a great example of why it takes a very specific process to get an OEM match. The most important thing when you're doing quad coats such as Ford code RR is being very specific and diligent about all the flash times from your undercoats, your sealers, your base, your mid coats, and then finally your clear coats. Due to all the extra film build that you will achieve while making these refinish procedures, it's very important that all the products are allowed to get the solvents out of them so when they're finished they look dynamite. So once again, this is Ford code RR, world's largest letdown panel.